I've dismembered over 100 people. I've stared into the eyes of Miami's most depraved killers. But Arthur Mitchell? The Trinity Killer? He didn't just hunt victims, he hunted everything I thought I knew about myself, and that terrified me more than any blade ever could. You have to understand something about being a predator. We recognize each other. It's like a scent in the air, a frequency only we can hear. When I first learned about Arthur Mitchell, I felt that recognition. But there was something else, something that made my dark passenger curious. And trust me, when a homicidal urge gets curious, it's rarely a good sign for anyone involved. Most killers I encounter are sloppy, unemotional. They leave trails of chaos that make my job easier, like breadcrumbs. If breadcrumbs were made of forensic evidence and poor life choices. But Arthur had been killing for over 30 years, and the FBI still called him a ghost. 3 decades of perfect murders, each one a masterpiece of planning and execution. That's not just skill, that's artistry. The kind that makes you wonder if there's a serial killer hall of fame somewhere, and if so, whether they serve refreshments. But here's what really caught my attention. Arthur Mitchell wasn't just a killer. He was a husband, a father, a pillar of his community. Everything I was desperately trying to become with Rita and the kids. He had cracked the code I'd been struggling with my entire adult life. How to feed the beast while maintaining the facade. It was like he'd found the holy grail of work-life balance, except the work involved dismemberment and the life involved potluck dinners. At least, that's what I thought. When I first saw Arthur interact with his family, I felt something I'd never experienced before. Envy. Not of his kills. I had my own methods, my own satisfaction. No, I envied his apparent peace. Here was a man who seemed to have found the perfect balance between darkness and light. I was like a struggling artist meeting Picasso, except instead of painting, we specialized in creative corpse arrangement. Sunday mornings, Arthur Mitchell sits in the front pew of his church, arm around his wife, children beside him, listening to sermons about love and redemption. His neighbors see a devoted family man, who volunteers for community projects and coaches Little League. They see someone who epitomizes the American dream. Meanwhile, I can barely manage small talk at the grocery store, without someone asking if I'm feeling alright. Looking for something. Answers? I watched him for weeks, studying his patterns, his methods, the way he moved through his suburban world with such ease. No awkward small talk like I struggle with. No forced smiles that never quite reach the eyes. Arthur seemed genuinely comfortable in his skin, both versions of it. It was almost insulting, really. Here I was, working overtime to appear normal, and Arthur was practically giving master classes in suburban camouflage. I've always felt like an actor playing a role. Dexter the boyfriend, Dexter the colleague, Dexter the father figure. The mask never quite fit right. People could sense something was off, even if they couldn't identify what. But Arthur? He wasn't wearing a mask at all. He was seamlessly both things at once. That's what made him so terrifying. Not his kills. Those were just mechanics. It was his complete integration. I started following Arthur more closely, convinced I could learn from him. Here was living proof that what I wanted was possible. A real family. Genuine connections. A life where the monster could be fed without destroying everything else. I was basically conducting an informal internship in advanced serial killer management, which is definitely not a course they offer at community college. I remember the exact moment my perception began to crack. Arthur and I were driving together. Don't ask how I arranged that, and we hit a deer. It was badly injured, whimpering, suffering. I suggested we put it out of its misery. Logical, merciful, efficient. Arthur was horrified, genuinely, viscerally horrified. The man who had methodically tortured and killed dozens of people was heartbroken over a wounded deer. He couldn't fathom my practicality. I stood there thinking, really? This is where you draw the moral line? A deer?
Are you fucking serious?
It was like watching someone refuse to swat a mosquito in a room full of corpses. That moment shattered the illusion. Arthur wasn't at peace, he was fractured. My kills are utilitarian. His were emotional exorcisms wrapped in ritual. His dear empathy wasn't proof of humanity. It was a warning sign, a glimpse into a deranged hierarchy of pain. The more I observed his family, the more I realized he wasn't balanced at all. His wife flinched when he raised his voice. His children walked on eggshells. Their home looked like a Hallmark card but felt like a mausoleum. Like a Norman Rockwell painting redone by a forensic psychologist with unresolved trauma. One night he berated his son for a spilled drink with such cold, calculated fury. I felt something unfamiliar. Protectiveness. Me, Dexter Morgan, feeling protective of a child being emotionally brutalized by another version of me. There should be a support group for that. We could meet in a church basement and awkwardly avoid eye contact. And Arthur didn't even see the damage he caused. He thought he was being a good father, teaching discipline, instilling order. In his mind, control was love. Domination was structure. It was the same twisted logic he applied to his victims. He'd convinced himself he was saving them. that his rituals had purpose. That's when Arthur stopped being a curiosity and became something else entirely, a warning, a glimpse into what I might become if I ever let go of the code, if I let the darkness seep into the cracks of my everyday life. Arthur's kills were as methodical as they were symbolic. A woman in a bathtub, a mother falling from a building, a father beaten with a hammer. Trinity, they called him. 3 kills, then silence, then the cycle repeated, like some deranged Gregorian calendar.
It is a case.
Yeah, I figured.
I call him the Trinity Killer.
But I missed something. There was always a 4th kill. The FBI had missed it. I missed it. And when someone like me misses a murder pattern, it's like a surgeon forgetting to remove the scalpel. The kind of mistake that leaves a scar, or a corpse. The moment I discovered that pattern, the whole thing snapped into focus. His victims weren't random. They were echoes, reflections of one original trauma. Arthur's sister died in a bathtub when they were children. He was spying on her. She slipped, hit the glass, then bled out. His mother, consumed by grief, leapt to her death. His father, a violent drunk, beat Arthur daily, blaming him for everything. And Arthur, he was just a boy, powerless, burying his pain like the boys he'd later bury alive in the ground. Each cycle was a reenactment. The sister in the tub, the suicidal mother, the abusive father, and then Arthur, the helpless child, symbolically buried, again and again, like some twisted one-man play on endless repeat. Therapy with a body count. And that's where Arthur became more than just a cautionary tale. He became prophecy, a vision of my possible future. You see, my kills have rules, boundaries, Harry's code, my own sick version of ethics. I don't kill innocents. I don't leave evidence. I don't lose control. That control, it's everything. But Arthur showed me how thin that line really is. How easy it is to lie to yourself. To think you're in charge when really you're just obeying a different kind of compulsion. He thought he was controlling the chaos. In truth, the chaos was controlling him. Arthur Mitchell was the embodiment of long-term failure disguised as success. On paper, he had it all. Family, routine, purpose. But underneath, it was rot, decay, fear passed off as love, obsession parading as discipline. The more I saw, the more I recognized the signs. And the more I hated that recognition. Because I wasn't just looking at Arthur, I was looking at myself. The deeper I dug into Arthur's life, the clearer it became that his family wasn't just collateral damage. They were his hostages. His wife lived in silent dread. His daughter masked terror with obedience. And his son, a walking anxiety attack.
So thankful for you, Arthur.
Shut up, cunt. Whoa, Arthur.
Every moment under that roof was soaked in fear disguised as structure. It reminded me of something Harry once told me. Monsters don't always growl. Sometimes they smile at the neighbors and mow their lawn on Sunday. And here's where Arthur became my nightmare. I thought I was better. I thought the code made me safe, ethical, noble even. In a very twisted way, I thought I could juggle both lives. Dexter the blood analyst, by day, the dark passenger's chauffeur by night. But Arthur showed me what happens when you lie to yourself for too long. I began slipping. Rita noticed. The kids noticed. My late nights, my distant stares, the cracks were showing. The facade was buckling, and the very thing I thought I was protecting. My family was starting to fall apart. Arthur kept his family in line through fear. I couldn't do that. I wouldn't. So what was I left with? Juggling knives on a tightrope made of secrets. I had to end him. But Arthur wasn't done teaching me. When I finally cornered him, I didn't just see a killer. I saw a mirror.
Hello, Dexter Morgan.
A distorted version of myself, aged and hollowed out by years of self-deception. The kill itself wasn't clean. It was messy, emotional, personal, not like me. Not like the ritual I'd perfected. It was as if Arthur had infected me with his chaos. But I did it. I ended him. And I thought that was the end of it. I drove home, telling myself I had restored balance. I had eliminated the threat. Everything would go back to normal. Except it didn't. Arthur had one more lesson to teach me. When I got home, I found Rita dead, slashed in the tub. Arthur's final act wasn't about ritual. It was about revenge. And that broke me. He didn't just take her life. He took the illusion I'd worked so hard to maintain. The belief that I could live in both worlds, monster and man, without them eventually colliding. Arthur proved that the collision is inevitable. That the darkness always leaves blood on your hands, even when you think you're wiping them clean. The bathtub was quiet, still, like time itself had stopped. But inside me, a storm, one I hadn't felt since I first learned what I was. Only now it wasn't the dark passenger steering. It was grief, rage, shame. Arthur Mitchell taught me many things. How predators hide in plain sight. how trauma echoes through generations, how rituals can become prisons. But most of all, he taught me that monsters don't get to have families, not without consequence. He was the ghost of my future. A man who wore normalcy like skin, until it decayed, who thought he could keep the beast in check while playing husband and father, who thought he was in control, when he was just running from himself. I used to believe my code made me different, but standing in that blood-stained bathroom I couldn't believe in much anymore. Arthur wasn't just a killer. He was my worst nightmare, because he was honest. He accepted what he was and let it destroy everything around him, and in doing so he showed me that the path I was on didn't end with redemption, it ended in red. If you think Arthur was bad, wait until you meet the others. Because I've faced predators that challenged not just my code but my sanity, and some of them, I barely survived. Check out the video on the end screen to see the most terrifying people I've had to kill.